Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dorkside Cookies. Today we're talking about the 5 most common mistakes I see new players to Terraforming Mars. All right, let's get into it. Teaching a lot of new people how to play Terraforming Mars lately, I see a lot of mistakes come up over and over again. So I thought I would put this video together and just sort of maybe preempt some of these mistakes. And who knows, maybe some of you have been playing a while and you're still making these mistakes. So let's get into it. So mistake number 1. The corporations and the research phase, the beginning of the game research phase, right? Step 1 of the phase normally is pass a generation. You don't do that first generation, and you don't do a normal research phase. Instead, what you do is you deal everybody 2 corporations, and you deal them 10 research cards. And what I see people doing is they actually choose their corporation first, and they don't choose it in coordination with their planner cards. So let's just look at that a little bit more closely. So in this case, I drew Helion and Foblog. Let's call it Foblog. So Helion is a very powerful corporation, in my opinion. I mean, this is debatable to a certain extent, but being able to use money or heat as money is pretty good, and especially towards the end of the game when heat is worth nothing. Like you could say that heat production is worth thermalist, but the heat you're producing to win that award is not worth anything. You just end up with piles of this stuff at the end of the game, unless you have the right technology card to use it, which most people aren't going to, right? So Helion, as soon as temperature hits the max, they absolutely can use heat for money every turn. That's big. Plus, in the beginning, if they're a little bit shy, they can choose to use that heat for money. I just think it's a very powerful group, not to mention the fact that they start with 3 extra heat production, so every other turn, they can push the temperature up by 1. Okay, let's look at Foblog. Foblog, 10 starting titanium, and when they spend their titanium for resources, it's worth 1 extra. So it's going to be worth 4 in the beginning, 4 money for each titanium you transfer. So that's a strong ability. I could not tell you what to choose between these 2, but you look at the 10 cards you were given: small animals, cupola city, strip mine, Deimos down, greenhouses, magnetic field generators, asteroid mining, release of inert gases, regolith eaters, cloud seeding. Now I can give you advice, right? So of course you have to buy these, so you're not going to get all these, but which ones are you going to get? So right away I'm seeing, minus energy production, -2 energy production, -4 energy production. This one produces 2 extra steel production and 1 extra titanium production. And this one, asteroid mining, gives you 2 extra titanium production. And then the rest, give you various stuff. The important thing is which of these cards work for which corporation. And the answer is effectively none of them help Helion. I like Helion a lot. If there were no cards to help either faction, I think I would lean towards Helion, personally. But in this case, Foblog, every time. Foblog, because this game is about your ability to adapt and not bring in just a set strategy. Every turn, you're going to get different resources, different technologies. You have to be really good about adapting your strategy to the card you get. So there you go. Make sure that you're not choosing the corporation in a vacuum. Look at your 10 cards, make your decision that way. And that's the first mistake I see people make. This is really basic. It never lasts very long. This mistake normally doesn't last very long, but I have seen online other people have this problem, and it actually does like take root in their group. So mistake number 2 is they think you only get one pass around the table. So you're going to take 1 to 2 actions each pass until everybody runs out of actions, basically until everyone passes. So in the first generation, generally you're gonna, like, I would take, let's say, 2 actions, and then goes over to my buddy Steve and he takes 1 action, and then goes over to my buddy Ramsey and he takes 2 actions. I'm then going to take another, let's say, 1 action, and then Steve let's say he passes. He spent all of his money his first action phase. Now, so he passed. Ramsey takes 1 action. I take 1 action. Steve passed, so he's out. Ramsey passes. I take 1 action. And now I can take as many actions as I want. I could take 3 more actions if I could. And then finally I pass. And then that's the end. So make sure that you're taking 1 or 2 actions and then going around until you have nothing left that you need to do. Mistake number 3. Food production always has to be paid. And food resources are generally optional. But follow the card. Whatever the card says, right, is ultimately correct. So, for example, small animals. It says decrease any plant production 1 step. Well, if everybody else is at 0 food production, you have to decrease your food production by the amount listed, in this case 1. So if I was at 1, I'd have to go to 0. And if everybody's at 0, you can't play this card. It is a firm requirement cost. Mistake number 4, tile placement restrictions. So this definitely, I see this happen all the time. Even people who know the rule will still make this mistake, because you can kind of get excited and kind of be like, yeah, I can't wait. Like, I need titanium or whatever. You have to pay careful attention to the cards in the tile restrictions. For example, forests. Forests are always forced to go next to a tile you own if you own any. So in the beginning, I can look at here and I can say, okay, I want to put this tile placement. I'll put it here on Pavonis Mons because I want that titanium resource and the food resource. Okay. I then build another forest next turn. I have to put it next to one of these. That's a restriction on when you're terraforming. So you have to grow forests and not groves. Now, if you build a city, it's a little bit reverse, right? The city says you can only build a city that is not adjacent to another city. So I could build it here next to my forest. That makes a lot of sense because cities equal the number of points equal to the number of forests near them. But you could, if you really needed a planner card for free, you couldn't afford them or something, then there you go. You could put it here. Now you have a planner card. And then now your next forest card, you can put either place. You could be, okay, I'm going to do it here and get another planner card. Boom. Or you could be like, I know I'm going to be building something over here, so I'm going to expand my forest over there. Either way you want, but definitely pay attention to those restrictions. Similarly, you can't put a city next to a city. Number one, you're screwing yourself out of extra points because cities don't give cities points. Forests give cities points. That's why the card that lets you put cities next to cities gives you points, because they're taking away your points, by doing that. Okay. Other tile restriction cards. This can be a huge problem, again, because it doesn't always play this way. And I think that that's what causes the most grief. So you play mining rights, and mining rights says place this tile on an area with a steel or titanium placement bonus, increase that production by 1, right? So I could say, all right, put mining rights right here. It's titanium. Now I get a titanium boost. Done. But then somebody else gets mining area. Place this tile on an area with a steel or titanium placement bonus adjacent to another of your tiles. Increase your production of that resource 1 step. And there you go. That's the problem. If you're used to mining rights, it's very easy to get confused by mining area. So in this case, if this was the map, I could not place mining area because none of the areas next to this tile have steel or titanium, and none of the areas next to the city have steel or titanium. So mining area is restricted. It's cheap. That's the value. That's the reason for it, right? It only costs 4 instead of 9, but you can't just put it in the best space. You've got to put it in a place next to something you own. And that's why, from a strategy perspective, don't just put forests anywhere. I suspect, as a general rule, since you don't know the future, your very first forest, you probably want to put near a titanium or steel resource, because you don't know if you're going to get something in the future. But it's debatable, right? You could put it to LaSalle. It's only 1 less food, and you're next to all this stuff, and you could easily expand out. But that's up to you. Mistake number 5. This is not a gameplay mistake. This is a strategic mistake. After generation 3 or 4, this is going to have to be something you learn. After generation 3 or 4, you don't want to keep investing in things that will no longer be valuable at the end of the game. So, for example, beam from a thorium asteroid. It gives you 3 heat production. It gives you 3 energy production. It gives you 1 victory point. That's a strong card. I mean, I get excited. When I draw this first turn, I get excited. I'm like, wow, this is going to be great. The problem is it's expensive and requires a Jovian card. So, a Jovian tag. And so you may not be able to use it for a long time. Maybe generation 4, 5, or 6. I don't recommend, unless you're Helios Corporation, to put out any cards that influence energy or heat after generation 3 or 4. Because by then, the heat of the planet is probably starting to get high. And at least in my games, by generation 4, it's probably hovering right around here. So if generation 4, you put out beam from a thorium asteroid, and then your buddy pushes it the next up to +4, +6, +8, by the time you get, generation 4 production phase, you actually get this heat and energy. Generation 5, you try to use it, somebody else already takes that +8. Done. You missed out. Now, when the game ends, probably around generation 10 or 11, you're going to have a pile of heat. And unless you went for Thermalist, which is only 5 victory points, I mean, that's 5 victory points is good. But if you end up ending the game with a huge pile of heat, you're going to be at a disadvantage compared to somebody else who spent 32 money on food, on titanium, on money. It can be similar, like steel or titanium. Towards the middle end of the game, if somebody else had kept investing in money production, they're probably better off than you are with your titanium production. So you got to keep an eye on the tempo of the game. And every game, every strategic game has a different tempo, and you want to keep your eye on it. And you kind of like want to make sure that you're keeping pace with everybody else. Every action in a game like this has a cost. Somebody on BGG, he estimated that if all you did was build cities for mayor and greenery for gardener, if that's all you did the whole game, by generation 10 or 11, you'd have between 63 and 73 points. To me, that sets your pace. That bare bones game, if there was no cards and all you could do were these things, you know that if you have less than 63 points, you probably messed up your tempo. So you have to do actions that give you more, or at least the same as what would end up resulting you in ending with the 65 points. And apparently that 65 points comes just from greenery. So just watch your tempo, and don't invest in the cool technologies that aren't worthwhile anymore. A lot of these technologies are only good at the beginning. Do not be afraid to just sell them, because as one victory point, you could, on one hand, you look at a card like this and you say, well, okay, it has the most value the earlier in the game that you get it, right? All production cards, the earlier you get it in the game, the more you're going to get to use it. But if I had Beam from Authority Mastery last turn, I would build it, because I probably have more money than not. But then again, shouldn't I be able to build a city at that point? 32 money. This is 32. Unless I have a big pile of titanium, I probably am better off building a city for 25 instead of 32 and getting 3 points, 4 points, 6 points. That it's just not a good return unless you get it really early, so you can actually use that heat production. That's what I'm saying, is just don't buy things too late. Everything is worth different amounts depending on when you do it in the game. And those are the 5 most common mistakes I see. So what I want to ask you guys is, what mistakes have you seen, and what advice can you give other players? So maybe you made the mistake, maybe you saw the mistake, maybe you heard about the mistake. Just post it down below, and we'll just kind of help each other out. And if I get enough really good ones, maybe I'll do the next 5 most common mistakes. And who knows, maybe you'll even help my group out. Maybe we're making a mistake that we don't know about. I'm sure if I posted a game review, we would do something wrong, either because we know it's wrong or because we get too excited and forget. So with that, till next time, guys.